Cool. Thank you for that introduction. And how do I beat that show that was put on just before coming? That's a tough act to follow. I'm super excited to be here today. And then again, I want to thank all of the sponsors that have made this possible. I mean, this is going to be a fantastic day where lots of great content's going to be shared. The purpose of my talk today is actually to talk about the purpose of purpose and this notion of brand utility. Last year, I had the great privilege of talking about the channelless customer. So this year, I'm going to talk about this idea of purpose. And a lot of brands and a lot of businesses are thinking about this now. And I actually think it's a really critical topic, and especially when we're looking to drive transformational change in our businesses. So I'm gonna kick off with one request, and a similar request I made last year. I want you to assume your consumer profiles, your personas, yeah? So think about what I'm about to talk about as, first and foremost, as consumers, as people who buy products and services. But I also want you to think of it through the lens of as employees, and in terms of the importance of this topic when you think of purpose and what that means to you and how you make decisions about brands you're going to work with. So if I think about sort of my purpose, my family is an incredible important part of my life. I'm a passionate marketer. I'm someone who loves marketing and talking about customer experience, etc. But obviously, my core purpose is my family in terms of, and I think this is something we all would share in terms of similar passions. But it wasn't always like that. At one period in my life, I was a single guy traveling the world, partying, exploring different cities and learning lots of new, exploring new cultures, etc. But if I think about what my purpose is, and what my goals are going forward, they've fundamentally changed. And it really is about trying to be the best dad and husband I can be, yeah? So, I strive to do this, is a goal. But for me, that's quite an important part of my life and what drives me every day when it comes to work. But I think it's important, to be happy and achieve something in this world, everyone must cultivate this sense of satisfaction. I think we need to do that. I think we want to be satisfied with our experiences we're having, whether it's at work or at home, because you can't, without a purpose, purpose gives us grounding. It gives us something to anchor ourselves to. It ultimately helps provide satisfaction. Sorry, this click is a little sensitive. Purpose is practical and doable. So when we think about purpose, I'd like you to think about these ideas. And for me, to fulfill my purpose, I also have to understand that my boys and my wife are different. They're individuals. So, Ilan, who's on your left, is, into parkour. Sasha is a book reader and a coder. So they're very different. I have to tailor my approach to how I engage with them differently. I can't treat them with a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to them as individuals, yeah? So this is an important point of understanding in terms of purpose for me, and also this notion of brand utility, which I'll explore. Because ultimately for me, and I would argue, purpose isn't a luxury. It is really foundational to our businesses, to how we operate as individuals, as employees, as managers, as ultimately just humans operating in this world. For me, okay, all right. Technically, there we go. I'm gonna skip the video that was supposed to show there. Actually, no, I want to show this video because it's actually quite funny. So. Let me cue the video. Can you bring the sound up?
Oh. God.
So it goes a bit longer. There's a technical issue there. But I think that video illustrates for us fathers out there, I think we can identify with that. I try my best to be a great dad, a great husband, a great employer, but I don't always get it right, yeah? So again, I strive to do my best. But it's also important to understand that, purpose is not about saving the world. And this is another thing I think, or for me at least, yeah? And I think a lot of brands have started to mistake this as an opportunity to go out and talk about themselves. I don't know if you remember, Pepsi got into some hot water around this. They were sort of staking out a point of view on this, which was very purpose-led, but ultimately backfires. So you've got to be careful when it comes to purpose and understanding what that really means. It really isn't an opportunity and meant to be about talking about ourselves, yeah? So a lot of brands have mistaken, this notion of purpose as an opportunity for them to say, look how great we are, look how virtuous we are. I think it's more than that. I think it actually is much deeper than that. it really is about, who you are and understanding reasons for being. Yeah, I think it really gets back to this. And I love Simon Sinek's work. I read his book a long time back, and it really connected with me. He's Know Your Why, I think it is the title of his book. And I think this is a really important point to understand. And if you haven't read this book, I fully recommend you read it, yeah? Because, a lot of brands, we know how and what we do, but we don't often we lose sight as to why we do it, yeah? Especially the bigger we get as a company, the more complicated we get. We lose sight of why we actually began our businesses. And I think we need to have a clear understanding of what our why is. The reality is, there's a lot more opportunities for us in how we can engage customers now, how we can create products and new pathways to reaching them and them reaching us. We can now get to, tailor our experiences with our customers in a more personal way. Really exciting opportunities now, and technology is playing a massive role in helping us do this, both as a brand trying to engage with our customers, but also our customers engaging with us and one another. But there's a lot of challenges. This is not easy. I'd love to say I could give you one silver bullet, one piece of technology that would solve all your problems, but I'd be lying, and anyone that does say that is lying to you as well. Because change is hard. The actual idea of change is changing in itself. The velocity, the pace of change is confusing. It's a bit challenging now. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I sit back and go, oh my God, which direction should I go? There's so many different ideas and information coming at me at any one time. It's becoming more complicated. When I started work in 1990, life was a lot easier. I used to handwrite my letters and put them in the post, and it would be a week before I hear back. Now, I'm constantly being bombarded by messages from all over the world. So these, new challenges are being presented to us all the time. And ultimately, businesses are trying to navigate all this change. Not just businesses, we are. Each and every one of us in this room is trying to navigate this. It's a real challenge. How do we navigate this fast-paced world and do it in a way that enables us to actually feel that we're creating value and ultimately, being able to walk away from our offices and feel that we've created something meaningful during the day. And I think with all this change, comes this sort of position of where do I start? Where do I begin? And I would like to suggest that we need to think about another important point is even though we have all these challenges facing us as employees, the reality is we as consumers don't care how hard it is for the brands that are trying to service us. That's a harsh truth. It's a real truth. The fact is, no matter where a customer encounters our brand, ultimately, we only care about our needs. I think it's a fair statement to say. So this is a real challenge for us when it comes to how we're going to go, adapt to this new reality and do it at a pace that serves our customers' needs and their increasing demands. And the fact is, I would argue purpose is not a luxury. This is something that we need to understand. We need to understand the importance of it, not just for our customers, but also for our employees. And that's actually a key point for me. Purpose is not just about what we say to our customers in terms of what our value statement is, our mission statement. It is more importantly how we motivate and drive change inside our organizations that ultimately results in a mindset shift that aligns to the ultimate goals of what we're trying to achieve. And I think purpose is a really important part of that. And for me, brand purpose becomes that beacon inside the organization that enables us to all align, irrespective of the functions we are in, whether it's marketing, sales, logistics, supply chain, IT. The purpose that we generate and we rally around is what's going to ultimately enable us to drive the transformational change that's needed. Because brand purpose and its practical counterpart, brand utility, are powerful assets, yeah? They're powerful assets. So I'll expand on what brand utility is shortly. But without clarity of purpose, brands really risk this fragmented approach, and we continue to see it. I've been on the technology side for 10 years, but before that I was on a client side and worked across multiple projects, CRM projects, going right back into, around the early 90s, and I still see the same points of failure occurring that were happening back then, happening today. And I think it ultimately does anchor back not to the technology aspect, but it really does come back to the organizational behaviors that are required, changes that are required in order for us to actually, deliver on the visions that we're trying to roll out across our businesses. And this is why this fragmented business approach is actually something we need to understand. How do we address that? Because without understanding what our purpose is, I would argue it would ultimately lead to chaos, yeah? Because that, like I said earlier, is going to be the beacon that we all rally around. And if we don't do this right, clearly our customers are going to be unhappy. And as I said earlier, there's loads of choices for them in terms of where they can go. So how do you deliver brand utility? And what is that? What is this notion of brand utility? So I'd like to expand on that. But before I do that, brand purpose, let's look at it from a definition perspective. Brand purpose is the why and the meaning behind your existence. It is the potential and the possibilities, yeah? That's the definition I'm using for brand purpose, yeah? Brand utility is how you apply your purpose. It's the offering and how you deliver value by serving your customers' needs. Think of brand utility as a service proposition, yeah? So how do I rally the organization around our customers and create value to them by delivering a service proposition to them? Not a marketing message, not a, we're awesome, look how great we are message, but actually helping them understand the value we're creating for them by solving real-world problems that they're looking to solve for. That is what brand utility is, yeah? And sorry, I think this is skipping, yeah. So for me, ultimately, we think about brand utility through the promises we make. Each and every day, we're making promises to our customers, to our ecosystem, to our employees. And every time we keep a promise, we build trust. Trust is the bedrock of customer experience and ultimately is the bedrock of the purpose of the organization, yeah? So omnichannel has really created an abundance of new ways for us to reach our customers. We know that. We can connect with our customers across so many different channels now that we couldn't even imagine, let alone 5 years ago, yeah? And there's more, we've got richer ways to develop insights in terms of what makes Nicholas Kontopoulos tick as a customer, what floats his boat, what drives him, so we can use data now to get much richer view. We know that, all of us in this room know that and understand that. And we're all exploring these notions of omnichannel and personalization and customer journeys. These are topics that most of us are now investing time and effort into understanding. I think it's really important. Sorry, the click is really sensitive. So how do you create brand utility, and to create ultimately a really rich and awesome and delightful customer experience? And as I said earlier, it's a real challenge. You think about all of the different information sources now we have as consumers. It's really tough. Who should I listen to? What content should I engage with? There's so many different channels that I'm using to source information and insights. But actually, one of the biggest problems we have is there's too much choice, and that's what becomes really difficult for us. Even in my own organization, I ask my teams only ever come to me with 2 options. I don't want 10 options, I want 2 options. So again, how do we serve our customers in a similar way? How do we help them make decisions more effectively? And this is where I think brand utility, this notion of brand utility is really important. How do we create content, curate that content, serve that content up to consumers in a way that actually does make their lives less complicated? That's really the end objective here for me. So as I said, Brian Solis is another great thinker and someone I've followed for a long time. He says it really well here. We as consumers ultimately now define the brand experience, yeah? So this is the reality. Even though I'd like as a marketer to think I have control over what people think of my brand, the reality is you guys do. You think you're playing a big role in shaping other people's opinions on how we as a brand are perceived in the market. So I need to understand that as a marketer and as an organization in order to be able to affect the outcome I'm looking to seek, yeah? So, because the fact is our customers will go elsewhere and we don't care about how hard it is to bring the physical and digital worlds together. We don't care. Simple. That's your problem, not my problem, yeah? I've got loads of choices locally, regionally, globally of people who are happy to make my life easier and by aligning their business around my needs. So again, this is a harsh reality we need to be always ever mindful of. We want immediate value, and again, this is putting a lot of pressure on businesses. How do I deliver that utility, that's brand utility, when my organization is disconnected, when we're not working with a common purpose, a common understanding of what is our why? That's the real challenge. Yeah. So we also look at our experiences, as I spoke in my last presentation last year about this notion of the channel as customers. Each channel for us is merely a window into your brand, yeah? Each of our brands, yeah? We need to understand that, and then that, again, has to be a driving force in terms of how we bring these different channels together to create this channel as customer experience. And ultimately, we want to shop with ease, yeah? there's a lot of talk about removing friction, and I actually think we want to remove unnecessary friction, but we also want to create the right amount of friction. We want to create friction that enables that customer or that consumer, whether it's a B2B or B2C scenario, to have a moment where they can stop and maybe pause and appreciate the value that you're delivering to them, yeah? So we do want to remove the friction, but in order to do that, we need to understand the customer's journey, end-to-end journey. This is something I've talked a lot about and I bang on about because a lot of brands just still don't have a clear understanding of how their customers traverse their businesses. And I think without that understanding, it gets very difficult for you to drive any meaningful transformation in your organization, yeah? I love this quote, I can tell you the exact future of retail, but I can't tell you the exact future of retail, but I can point you to the person who has that answer. That's your customer. So again, are we really listening to our customers? And this is the beautiful thing about operating in today's world. There's so much information that's being shared at any moment that enables us to really listen. To really stop and pause and listen to our customers. And we need to do that. Often, they're happy to share insights that will help us drive change, but we often don't take the time to listen. And I think this is where, again, when we look at how we harness data that we're collecting across the organization, if we can bring that together in a way that enables us to really listen to our customers, we can drive really great change in our organizations. So for us at Magento, we've been talking a lot about this, in terms of, from a commerce perspective, we need to think a much more bigger in terms of just seeing this as a technology play. We need to really think about how our customers ultimately engage us, from the moment they become aware of an issue. So when we're starting to think about driving transformational change, we need to start with that customer and ultimately the employee trying to service them at that stage. How do we serve that customer, create that awareness, initial awareness? How do we ultimately then help them through the discovery phase? This is in particular where brand utility as an idea becomes increasingly important through the content and information we're creating and serving up to our customers. How do we make that shopping experience and ultimately the purchase experience, really delightful, powerful, one that they actually either consciously or subconsciously will remember when it comes to, renewing the contract or making a repeat purchase. And how do we help them with the post-purchase element from a customer service perspective? And this is often overlooked, and I think this is that's where the moment of truth really kicks in. And how do we take those insights and feed that back into the customer journey process so that we're constantly refining the way we engage our customers? I think this is a really important point in terms of how we can leverage something like brand utility. Because for me, brand utility is the glue. It is ultimately the connective tissue that runs through all of that journey in helping that customer and ultimately the employees serving those customers deliver on the promises we're making each and every day. So how do you develop relationships with your customers at each stage of the journey? So, sorry about this, guys. This thing is super sensitive for the next speakers, yeah? So we need to start with people, yeah? People are absolutely going to be critical to this. What I'm about to share here is not new. I mean, I've talked about it a lot, but it's almost become cliche. But sometimes we need to stop and double click on cliches and actually pause and think about why did that become a cliche? And the reality is often, and we lose sight of the people element. And it's not just about the customer, it's also about the employees. We need to understand how we're going to help our employees deliver on the brand promises we're making as a brand to our customers, yeah? We then need to think about the processes. What redundancies do we have in our existing business processes that should we, look at jettisoning and replacing? And that's when the technology layer for me kicks in. Ultimately the technology pieces, I'm not downplaying the role of technology, it's absolutely critical, but without a clear understanding of how these other pieces come together, technology will fail to deliver on what we're trying to do, in my opinion, yeah? So show me the money. Any CFO worth his salt or her salt is going to say, hey, this sounds all great, Nick. This purpose thing sounds nice, but is there any money in it? Yeah. Well, there is some really great research out there that demonstrates the value of having a clear purpose and customer experience as well. Purpose-driven companies do make more money and have more engaged employees and more loyal customers and are better at innovation and transformational change. Harvard Business Review has some really great research on this, which we've got referenced here, and you guys can get a copy of the presentation later. to take a dive into it. But 53% of businesses said their organization is successful with innovation and transformational efforts. 89% with a clear sense of purpose said that their collective purpose drives their employee satisfaction. 84% said it can affect the organization's ability to transform, and 80% said it helps increase customer loyalty. So these are some really powerful data points. Those brands that are prioritizing purpose, 39% said a clear purpose, they have a clearly articulated purpose. So if you think of the brands that are really at the forefront of driving awesome customer experience and ultimately benefiting from that from a financial perspective, have a clearly defined purpose. 48% of the developers, brands that are developing, are working to develop a clear articulated purpose, and 13% of the laggards, the brands that aren't performing, don't have a well-communicated purpose. So again, if you look at how the brands that are outperforming the market, these are brands that do have that clear purpose. And when I want to reinforce the purpose, in my humble opinion, is really important in terms of the employees. That's the rallying. That's what you use to rally the organization around how you deliver that ultimate delightful experience to your customers. And again, some data points show here that those brands that are really investing in and having that clear purpose are outperforming, in terms of the revenue growth, yeah? So again, take a look at the report, the research. There's some really great insights in addition to that. I really recommend you have a look at that. I'm going to also now point to a brand that's in region that I think's got a great, is embracing this notion of purpose and ultimately brand utility really well. It's one of our customers down in Australia, Athlete's Foot. So I'm going to actually skip the video because I think the videos aren't playing properly. So I'll just jump across to the next slide. Basically, for those that are, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Athlete's Foot. They're a great retail brand down in Australia that sells, shoes, to athletes or aspiring athletes. And what I love about what these guys are doing is they're blending the physical and digital worlds together in a really nice way, and how they can create this notion of brand utility. And they're doing this, by integrating the technologies into the in-store experience that enables me to basically go in and actually, I'll come on to that. I've just jumped ahead of myself, sorry. I want to reference this quote because I think it's an important quote. We had to identify our brand purpose, and what we realized was that we had to talk about when we do, rather than why we are here. This is an evolution, not a revolution. The rebrand is the first step in a more mature customer experience focus that allows us to keep the conversation going. Mark Tepperson, says it also really well here. The challenge was, how do we take this physical in-store customer experience of matching the right shoe to the right customer's foot into an online environment? And how did they do this? So they created some really cool tech that enabled me to walk into a store and ultimately have my foot measured, actually have a foot ID created, and they can use that to then best match the shoes that are appropriate to what I'm trying to achieve as a consumer. So if I'm looking to do cross-training, etc., they'll find the right shoes and based on that information and tailor that experience they're delivering to me as a result. And the cool thing here is I'm sharing personal information with them. Yeah, I mean, if you think about what I'm doing here, I'm sharing personal information, and they're using that information to create a utility, a brand utility, a service that helps me get better use out of the product that I ultimately buy, but equally helps them going forward in terms of better targeting me and how they engage with me as a consumer. So I think it's a really great example of how a brand is really understanding this notion of an experience-driven commerce sort of strategy. How do we bring all elements of the organization together to ultimately serve the customer in a way that delivers them a service that they're seeking out. So that's what I think Athlete's Foot has done a really great example of doing that. And obviously as a business, and what I'm really excited about now, with Adobe acquiring Magento back in, I think it was May last year now, it's crazy to think how fast it's gone. I mean, the possibilities we now have in terms of as a business, in terms of helping our customers on that, have increased exponentially, because a lot of what I've spoken to you about here involves a lot of different pieces of technology ultimately coming together from a digital experience perspective. And now Adobe, through the acquisition of Magento, is really going from this, creating this opportunity for us to go from creating content to fulfillment and everything in between. So how we can, take the insights we're learning about our customers and ultimately use that to create really engaging content, to then ultimately serving that content up through the channels that I'm looking to use, through to then actually, transacting and then ultimately having the goods or services delivered to me is now a real possibility. And that's what's super exciting about the evolution now of what we're seeing with Magento and as part of as an Adobe company. So really exciting opportunities ahead for us as an ecosystem, as a tribe that is looking to drive meaningful change in our customers' businesses. As I said, really exciting times. So in terms of the back end of my presentation, I often use this quote. I really like Peter Drucker's work. I think he was a man that was well ahead of his time. And what he says here is, I think, really important. I liked it for one reason because he was talking about how important marketing is. As a marketer, I love that. But the reality, if I think of him, if he was here today, I really do think he would update that quote and say, customer experience and innovation are really the driving forces behind businesses today. And when we think about customer experience, it is an enterprise-wide effort. It's one experience, one customer, one experience, one enterprise type mindset. Ultimately, the end goal here for us is to try to make engaging with our brand, simple. Ultimately, not scary. We don't want our customers approaching us with fear. We also don't want our employees being fearful when they go into the office about their ability to deliver on the brand promise. So again, that always has to be front in mind in terms of our thinking when it comes to how do we drive change in our businesses. So I'm going to play a short video here.
Huh? Emma. Emma. Emma.
Paper has a big future. New Kittensoft, now bigger and softer than before.
So why am I playing an ad about toilet paper? I love that ad for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, hands down, that's me and my wife. Exactly. I mean, she's analog. She uses Post-it notes. I'm digital. So that connected with me from a content perspective. But also, I think there's a nice message in there about the digital and physical worlds. It's not about one or the other. It's actually about blending the two worlds together. And again, we have a lot of talk about digital, taking place at most events, et cetera. But we also need to think about the physical side of the equation. It is about bringing those two worlds together and architecting an experience that ultimately is delightful for our customers and the employees servicing them. So, with that, I used this quote last year. I'm going to do the same again. I want to challenge each and every one of you to go back into your organizations and become those agents of change. Don't wait for your bosses to try to figure this out. They won't. You need to go and drive that change in your organizations. If you're interested in also doing this, be mindful that this is not simple. Yeah, it is going to take a lot of work, and it's quite hard. And again, one thing I loved about Steve Jobs' quote here is it really summarized this, nicely, is that, if you want to drive meaningful change, there's a lot of effort in making your business simple. It's just a fact. But if you do it, look at the transformational change you can make, both at a company or industry level. It is actually, there's a lot of upside. And each of us wants to be part of that. Who doesn't want to go into the office each day and actually be part of that change and help drive that change? If you're interested in learning a bit more about how to start sketching out your own purpose for your brand or your business, again, we've got a great worksheet here. I really encourage you to go and have a look at this. It's a great little asset you could start using inside your own organizations to drive a conversation on this. We're going to be investing more and more time in this topic from a content perspective, so you can keep, hopefully, your eyes open for more content coming from us. We have the Magento Accelerator webinar series, again, is another program that we're running, which, again, sees us exploring these types of topics. So I really encourage you guys to dive into that. My name's Nicholas Kontopoulos. I think I'm one of the only ones on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me on that. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to come and talk to me. We've got a great bunch of people here today from Magento, but also the broader ecosystem here. This is a great opportunity for us to network and share ideas. Let's huddle today and talk about some of the problems we're trying to solve and do that, use the collective intelligence that sits in this room to help try to solve that. So with that, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you later. Cheers. Bye-bye.